Coming up on today's show.
I think part of it is that we get really caught up in this concept of busy in our society, and people are trying to win bragging rights.
So now when you're working with clients, what are some of the obvious things that can be pulled away from the schedule that can maybe open it up a little bit and make it not so crunch?
Email has both been a wonderful time saver for us since it came years and years ago, but it's also become a little bit of a time sucker.
Are you crazy busy? If you are, that is not a badge of honor. We'll talk about that today on Keeping You Organized. Hello and welcome to Keeping You Organized. If you have that crazy busy badge of honor, or at least you are proud of being so crazy busy, we're going to ask you to stop right now. And we're going to bring in Lisa Montanaro from lisamontanaro.com. It's not a badge of honor, is it, Lisa?
No.
Why do people say it then, though? Why are they so proud of being so busy?
I think part of it is that we get really caught up in this concept of busy in our society, and people are trying to win bragging rights. Like they're actually stopping each other, and like let's say we were talking and we were like, hey, hey Lisa, how you doing? I'm like, oh God, John, I'm so busy. And you're like, oh, I know what you mean. I'm crazy busy. And then I might say something like, oh, I am so crazy busy. I didn't get any sleep last night. I mean, I went to bed at 3 a.m. and I had to get up at 6 and write this report. And you're like, sleep? Can't remember the last time I had sleep, And yet this is so negative, and it's so not helping either one of us. And people are trying to one-up each other to see who's crazier and who's busier, and yet no one's talking about what they should be doing, which is, actually being productive and getting things done.
Well, it seems like, too, that they're probably trying to be important. So, if you want to be important, then you have to be busy. And you don't necessarily have to be busy to be important, don't you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, if you look at some of the most successful leaders in our nation, sure, many of them are busy, but what I like is that we're seeing a new movement of people that are showing sort of life-work balance in a good way. And that's really what we should be trying to achieve, as opposed to, do you really want to look at your success model as someone that runs around like a chicken without a head? And if you look at the language we use, like, oh, I'm running around like a chicken without a head. Well, a chicken without a head is dead.
Dead, yes, that's true.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of other really negative language that we use. And so what I try to do is help my clients and help my audiences stop. I tell them to get off the crazy busy train. First of all, stop using that language, period. Like, take it out of your vocabulary because it's not serving anyone. And a lot of times what people want to hear from you is how well you're doing and how well you're able to manage things, and that you feel that you're in control of your schedule. And I think we're really afraid that if we do this, that we'll look like we're bragging. But that's actually what we should be bragging about, not bragging that we are crazy busy.
Well, it's really interesting. I have been through a few time management programs, and, you always do the goal planning and try to, and I always admire doctors, because doctors, they just, they can bill a lot of money because they show up in the morning and their schedule is literally jam-packed. It is crazy busy because that's how they're going to bill the most, but they don't have to really worry about putting their schedule together. They have a scheduler, but they are back to back to back, even overbooked, but that's really efficient. Now, at the end of the day, I don't know if they're saying, hey, I am crazy busy, or I'm just really productive,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I can't answer that for human medicine. My husband is a veterinarian, and he is right now in the middle of a grueling residency, and he has not much time at all. So he'll go in at 7 in the morning to start rounds, and he might not get in until between 10 p.m. and midnight. And that's just temporary. Whereas in a normal schedule, like you said, he'll go in a regular day, let's say 10 to 6, and he'll have, his surgeries booked and his appointments booked, and it is all booked for him. And then there usually is time for emailing clients and going through charts. So I think on a regular basis it works well, whereas in the middle of a residency or internship it's probably not the best time frame.
Right.
But it's interesting that you mentioned having someone else schedule you, because for some people relinquishing that control would be really stressful, and then for others it would be refreshing. They're like, oh, I would love nothing more than to have someone else handle my calendar and just tell me where to go and what time to be there and what time to start and end each thing. For many of us control freaks, that might not be the best scenario. But what I try to tell people to do is to look at their calendar with a fresh eye, because we get really caught up in this concept of booking, booking, booking. And we start, not saying no to anything, because part of that is, like you said, wanting to look important, wanting to feel important, wanting to give off the impression that we're very important.
Right.
And I have a lot of respect for people that will say, actually, I can't make that meeting because it's a priority for me to be at my son's soccer game. Like me personally, I have a lot of respect for those people. And those are the types of people that I want to look up to as a model of success, not the person that, gives up their health, their sleep, and their family in order to achieve that success. So I think part of this is figuring out, what is your success model?
Right. Well, and I think, if you look at somebody who says, oh, I'm crazy busy, and you come back to them and say, well, what are you going to do about it? And, I'm just too busy to deal with it. Then they're probably not that very productive, very productive people. So, well, let's try to shift the mindset. Well, so first of all, let's talk about the right kinds of words to say. It's interesting, my wife seems to be involved in a lot of things, and she won't say I'm crazy busy, but it's like everything's an A priority. And okay, well then, which of the A priorities are you going to get rid of, right? I mean, so what are some things from just a word standpoint, if you are a very busy person and maybe someone's trying to have coffee with you and you really can't get together with them, what would you say to them?
I think it's a great question. So let's say you do want to have coffee with them first and foremost, because if you don't want to have coffee with them, then you may use some different language. But let's say you want to have coffee with them, but right now it's not a good week. So you could say something like, my schedule is full this week, but how about next week? So we call that the counter offer. Okay. And I'm amazed how many people don't use it. So, it's a law term, because, my background is I'm a lawyer, and, people don't use it enough. And I think if we just counter offer, like someone calls you up and they say, hey, Lisa, do you have a minute? And you're like, actually, I don't have a minute right now, but how about after 3 p.m.? So it's so simple, and yet we don't use this counter offer technique enough.
Right. Well, it's interesting. A friend of mine was a golf professional, and, he would always say, well, I'm in the service business. When somebody calls up and they want to schedule an appointment, I just say, when do you want to meet? And if I'm open, I book it. But his place, the range where he worked was about 45 minutes from his house. So he'd book one and then have like a 3-hour gap and then book another one. And it's like, okay, that doesn't seem like it's, so this idea of count, and most people are used to negotiating schedules. Right. And don't they say the busiest people are the hardest ones to get an appointment with anyway? Or
Right. And in terms of language you can use, so I like to say to people something along the lines of, I have a busy, not a busy, see, I almost did it myself. You have to catch yourself. Yeah. So I have a booked schedule this week, and I have no more available slots, but I'll be happy to send you a link to my calendar for next week or the week after. Yep. So using terms like, I have a booked calendar this week, or I have no more open slots available, or I have no more availability this week. So that's a way, I'm already committed for this week. So those are words that are a little more positive than saying, I'm so busy I can't fit you in, or I'm so busy I can't sleep. So they're just a little more positive. I like to say to people, I live a full life by choice. So I literally will live a full life. I'll have things calendared in, and I may have, my running group, and I may have all my client sessions and an interview with you, and then maybe I'll go to dance class. So I live a full life. I don't give myself a ton of white space in that life, but it's by choice, and I can choose to change it at any moment. So I have control over it. And so that's really the key.
Now, do you have, just kind of going on a different path here, do you have like an app or an online calendar thing that you would recommend that people could use to do that, where someone could just be sent a link to a calendar?
I do. There are a few of them out there. I use TimeTrade, timetrade.com, and it is a paid service, but it's really reasonable. And that allows me to put in open slots, and my clients get the link, and then they can choose which slot works for them and book their own session right in. So that's a really nice one. I use Google Calendar as my actual calendar, and Google Calendar just recently implemented a new system called Appointments. And a lot of people don't know about it. I don't know why they haven't more heavily marketed it, but basically you can select appointments on your calendar. It gives you a link. You send them the link, and it goes directly onto your Google Calendar, and they can book in those slots.
Nice, nice. Now, what about setting up your calendar? Because if you want to have time for dance and time for running club and those things, do you do that monthly, weekly? How far in advance are you kind of blocking out the time when you don't want to have appointments for other people?
So this is a concept that I've been teaching a lot of my clients and audiences recently, and it's a total shift in thinking around time management. So it comes from the book called The Now Habit by Neil Fiore.
Okay.
Great book. And it's called The Unschedule. So the idea is that we tend to just keep piling things onto our schedule, our to-dos, our tasks, our responsibilities, and we don't usually leave time for the things like sleep, literally eating, exercising, family time, me time. So the idea of the unschedule, and this is the way that I've been doing it for years, and I didn't know it had a label. Neil kind of put a nice label on it for me. The idea of the unschedule is I schedule in first the things that most people don't schedule. So I actually will schedule in my exercise, my sleep, my vacations, my family time, my me time, and then I build onto that my appointments, my to-dos, my responsibilities once I've scheduled in the things that most people don't schedule.
Right.
So it's sort of a real big shift in thinking. So literally I will schedule in my running group and my dance classes, and there'll be recurring appointments on my calendar, and they're on there at all times so that they stay, and I will only move those off my calendar for a really, really important reason.
Right. Oh, those are great tips.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more tactics and strategies to get ourselves away from that. We're going to take that badge of honor away, what's called crazy busy, and we're going to replace it with something that's got a better sound to it. We'll find out what that is when we return with Lisa Montanaro from lisamontanaro.com in just a moment. Are you looking to get your office organized but don't know where to start? And what can you really do to keep your office organized? Smead has put together a new ebook to help you answer these exact questions. We've compiled the best tips from professional organizers around the country to help you tackle the most common office organizing challenges. Go to smead.com/office organization and get your free copy today. That's smead.com/office organization. The new organization for the office ebook from Smead, keeping you organized. We are back now on Keeping You Organized, overcoming the crazy busy syndrome, where before it was a badge of honor for you, and now we're going to create some new terminology. Lisa Montanaro, lisamontanaro.com. Do we have another term that we can get people thinking about? I know we talked a little bit in the first half about some verbiage, but what is a positive term for being, is it, my schedule is full? I mean, is that what you think, or...
It's a great question. I don't think as a society we've come up with the perfect term. I like to use the term passion management as opposed to time management because I feel that time management is an oxymoron. We actually don't manage time. Time will keep on ticking no matter what. And so I think it's kind of a misnomer. So I use energy management or passion management. So words to use, let's say, if you are pretty booked up, but you're loving it. Like I have a fairly booked schedule, but I book it with things that I love to do, my work, but also my leisurely activities. And so I say things like I'm living a purposeful and intentional, fully booked life that I'm enjoying. So it's very positive. So I'm purposefully filling my calendar with things that feed my passion, my interests. I love my work. So it's just a lot more positive way of saying it. So I would say purposeful, intentional. I have a satisfying schedule. So those are just more positive words than I'm crazy busy. Now, you and I both know that when people use the term crazy busy, they're not usually satisfied. Yeah. So I think first and foremost is if you're using that language is first to catch yourself and go, oh, wow, I'm doing this. And people probably after watching this will go, because you catch yourself doing it. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm really busy. And you're like, that word again. So the first thing to do is start catching yourself and then ask yourself, what does this really mean? If I'm saying I'm crazy busy, the way I equate that is what you're saying is I feel out of control. Mm-hmm. That's what it equates to. So it's taking back the control. And that's how you start to make the changes.
Yeah. So now when you're working with clients, what are some of the obvious things that can be pulled away from the schedule that can maybe open it up a little bit and make it not so crunched?
So if your schedule is almost like a plate, we have needs, shoulds, wants, and loves. And we spend most of our time on the needs and shoulds and not much time on the wants and loves. So one of the first things I would do is have them do a time map and first see where are you spending your time? Because a lot of people don't even know, John, as you probably can imagine. And I would also look to see where there's a lot of wasted time. Sometimes there's sort of the the helicoptering of, oh my God, I have no time, I have no time, I have no time, but it's because they're not strategically planning it out.
Right.
One of the first things to go would be things that they don't want to do, but they're afraid to say no to. So, things that can be delegated or outsourced that they really shouldn't be doing themselves. If you're falling into the control freak syndrome pattern, you tend to keep a lot to yourself. So the first thing would be to look at, what are they uniquely brilliant at? And if it doesn't fall in that category, let's start to think about outsourcing it, delegating, or giving it to the person that should be doing it anyway. And then another thing would be to diminish. Like, do they have to do everything all out? Do they have to go to every single PTA meeting or every single party, every single social event over Christmas and Hanukkah and in the holiday season? Probably not. So to give their calendar a little bit of a diet, to start to pull out the obligations that they always say yes to automatically, but that they really should start thinking strategically about what makes the most sense for them.
Yes, I know. I was involved in an organization this year, and last spring I was feeling a little overwhelmed. I said, okay, you know what? I need to take some time off, and it is great because now I have really a couple extra hours a week. Which is a lot when you have kids and all the other stuff going on. So even though that was a great organization, and I can't remember who said it, but someone said, is the good pushing out the best? And so it's like, really, even if you have a bunch of A1 priorities, which ones do you, like you said, do you love to do versus do I need to do, and can you just reshape it that way a little bit? And sometimes it's only one or two things that you have to remove to really open up what you are doing. And then I think also that mind shift of really using the right vocabulary. What about in the office? Let's go into the office because I know you work with a lot of businesses too. What are some of the things in an office that really make people kind of overwhelmed? I know a lot of times people make the excuse, well, we're downsizing and there's, 5 people doing the job of 10, but and that's valid in some situations. But what are some of the things in offices that you see where people could maybe open their schedules a little bit?
One thing I've seen a lot in the last few years in particular, and I think I've always known this, but I've really seen it in the hard, cold data when I'm working with a lot of organizations, is the lack of communication is causing a serious lack of productivity. So, for example, meetings that are scheduled, but no one has a real agenda. No one really knows if everyone needs to attend the meeting. The meetings aren't compartmentalized or containerized, so they don't start and end on time. A lot of these meetings can be taken care of by a quick survey because they just wanted to ask one question. So a lot of unnecessary wasted time, in my opinion, over meetings. And then if they just implemented some really great communication protocol, I feel like they could be saving a ton of productivity. But a lot of times they're not really talking to each other and having the conversations they should be having. Right. And so I think that really caused a lot of wasted time. It's
interesting. I can't remember which podcast it was on, but we were talking to one organizer, and this one company, what they did was all their meetings were standing up. So no one sat down during the meetings, so that way they were really focused on efficiency. I thought that was kind of a neat tip, that you go do that.
It's funny you said that. I have a client in New York that's a nonprofit, and they run this great nonprofit organization, which is about using the old trails, the old railway systems for walking trails. And I was working with the executive director of the nonprofit and their team, and I said, have you guys ever walked the trail that you're in charge of? And they all looked at each other like, no. I'm like, you've never walked the trail, and it's what you do for a living. And so they implemented walking meetings, and they said their meetings were so unbelievably efficient, and also it just infused this sort of passion for what they were doing because they were walking the trail. So yeah, it's kind of funny you said that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of creativity out there. Just sometimes just changing your situation or where you meet, or I know a lot of times in meetings people sit in the same spots, and sometimes I'll go into a meeting just sit in a different spot just to shake it up a little bit, to try because some people, that's my spot, you can't sit in my spot.
Another funny thing about the office in terms of not a funny thing, another tip about the office in terms of people sort of giving their calendar a diet is not just unnecessary meetings, but email has both been a wonderful time saver for us since it came years and years ago, but it's also become a little bit of a time sucker because there's a lot of what I call ping pong emailing. So yes, okay, maybe, and so writing effective emails, putting in the subject line exactly what you want from someone, the action that needs to be taken, not CCing people that don't need to be CC'd. So effective meetings and effective email and effective communication, I think in the office would go a long way towards productivity.
Awesome. Well, we're just about out of time here. I want to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, what kinds of clients you're working with. I know you don't do as much professional organizing as you did in the past, and tell us how people can get a hold of you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So my universe is at lisamontanaro.com. You can pretty much find me there. And I do a lot of productivity consulting with individuals and organizations around the country. I love it a lot. It's wonderful. It's great work. Is it in the realm of professional organizing? Absolutely, because sometimes we're still dealing with the physical realm. But I think most people realize it's not about the stuff. It's about changing their habits and behaviors. And so I work on improving personal and professional effectiveness holistically with them in their career and in their life and their work, and helping them make lasting changes. Right. So lisamontanaro.com, and then as you probably know, I have an online university. It's called lmguniversity.com, and I offer courses to improve people's lives and careers and businesses, and that's a lot of fun because I am able to help people around the world virtually, which, is just so much fun nowadays.
And plus, for those in-person things, you go out to the wineries of the wine country there, right, and do some coaching and consulting there as well, correct?
I did. That's so cool that you asked about that. So I just had my first purpose, productivity, passion retreat for women entrepreneurs, and we went to wine country for 3 days, and we had a blast, and definitely worked on improving our personal and professional development. But yes, we had great meals and beautiful scenery and good wine. And so, yeah, I'm pretty lucky to live out here.
That's great. Well, Lisa, we're out of time, but that was a bunch of tips. And what I'm going to tell the audience they need to do is at least pull one thing out of their schedule or rearrange, or at minimum, quit using that crazy busy word and live a purposeful life, or something a little more positively descriptive. So great. Well, we'll have you back again. And it's Lisa Montanaro from lisamontanaro.com. Go now and live a purposeful life. Don't be crazy busy. It's not a badge of honor. Be productive and live a great life. And we'll see you next time on Keeping You Organized. Coming up next time on Keeping You Organized.
How do you get started if you're just overwhelmed?
They're overwhelmed by the thought of what they think it's going to take to get to the end result they want.